From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 535. I'm Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X. With me as always, my co-host Derek, DP3 in our forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, it's time once again to talk about two of our favourite things, basketball and basketball video games, of course. As always, I'll throw it over to you to tip off this week's discussion.
So we have two main topics this week, Andrew. One, a community question. What's a basketball video game that others seem to really enjoy, but you've never been able to get into? And two, another community question. Hoopheads, do you have a real-life basketball memory you would like to share from playing pickup and or school hoops? And some examples would be a fight, an epic game, a game winner, playing in a special place, a great play, etc. However, before we get to the main topics, you shared an article with me that I felt was incredibly interesting. And I do believe that these predatory tactics are happening in video games, sports, or otherwise. And this is a game developer article written by Adrian Laurent. And I thought he did a great job with this article. The title is Predatory Tactics in Gaming Are Worse Than You Think. And he states, I want to shed light on a tactic that involves collecting data as you play, feeding this data into complex algorithms and models that then alter the rules of your game under the hood to optimize spending opportunities. And Andrew, we know how big predatory mechanics are in video games now, between loot boxes, microtransactions in general, season pass BS with the 2K series, the My Team and Ultimate Team practices, etc.
Just out of control. We've talked about it before and how much it's affecting gaming, and it's great to see him speaking out on these issues and giving this insight. Shout out to Leo, NLSC 3 member of the forum for many years, of course, for sending this article to me, because, as you said, it's spot on.
Yeah, and I'm going to read some of this article because I think it's very well written. He starts off by stating, when we think of predatory tactics in gaming, we often imagine deceptive UX designs, intrusive ads, or aggressive microtransactions. However, there are more insidious tactics that are rarely discussed, mainly because a lot of resources are spent hiding them to avoid backlash or even legal issues. And if the first thing that came to mind was Take-Two's new TOS, that's the first thing that came to mind when I read that first paragraph. He continues on to say, as a player, have you ever felt like some games are intentionally making you lose or win? That there is an invisible hand manipulating the odds against you? That the game keeps holding you back despite investing money to progress faster? That you're playing with different rules than others? While you might just be paranoid or unlucky, you could also be right. I want to shed light on a tactic that involves collecting data as you play, feeding this data into complex algorithms and models that then alter the rules of your game under the hood to optimize spending opportunities. This tactic is known by terms like dynamic balancing, personalization, segmentation, and targeting. Although these concepts are not new, the extent to which they impact modern games might surprise you, and is often obfuscated behind manipulated randomness so that players don't realize how much they are being conned. So before I continue reading, Andrew, what this makes me think of is I know that the original NBA Jam that we were playing, I understand that microtransactions weren't around at that time, right? But people got to remember, too, that NBA Jam was first an arcade game, right? That people would have to put money into, lots of quarters, right? And we've talked many times about the lack of balance in that game where the CPU all of a sudden becomes super when you go up by a certain amount of points and they tear you apart and you end up losing a 20-point lead in a minute or two, right? Yeah. And then they end up winning the game. So this is the type of stuff that came to mind when I was reading this article. You can think of games over the years where computer assistance either helped you out or it burned you. And more often than not, it's something that burns you. But I'm going to continue on. In the beginning of this year, Nexon was fined $9 million for manipulating the odds of their loot boxes to optimize spending opportunities. In live service games, manipulating randomness, as Nexon did, is not an exception, it's the norm. Many, if not most, studios operating live games do it to varying degrees. Allegedly, sometimes with good intentions, not all studios or free-to-play games are predatory. And a $9 million fine is nothing when your game's lifetime revenue exceeds $5 billion. In essence, a live game is a software with thousands of variables, such as the difficulty of a level, the odds and loot boxes, or the price of an offer. When you play online, every single interaction can be tracked, such as how much money you spend, how long your play sessions are, or how good you are at the game. Andrew, don't you dare be too good at these video games, because they are going to make your life a living hell.
But they told me to get good.
You have to put, yeah, I know. That's the community rally cry, get good. This data is analyzed and processed through various algorithms that can then change the variables in your game on the fly, putting you in situations where you're more likely to spend. For instance, if you are progressing faster than the game wants you to, it might subtly become harder or reduce the chances of getting certain rewards. If you're a big spender, the game might increase the price of offers you see, and this happens way more often than you think. It constantly adapts to your playing and spending behavior to keep you in what it considers the sweet spot of challenge and frustration, and it doesn't care if it's unfair, discriminatory, or predatory. So before I continue, Andrew, what comes to mind?
Well, here's the thing. There were nights when we were playing 2K Pro-Am. Leo, Kenny, Ben, the X, ZZ Cool J, myself, when it really did feel like something was being manipulated behind the scenes. That we were getting a different gameplay experience, session to session, or even game to game. So it wouldn't surprise me if there are mechanisms under the hood that are trying to push us towards upgrading a little bit quicker, or I don't know, if we're not getting the matchmaking to buy clothes, or some other technique to push us towards some kind of microtransactions, causing us frustration and seeking out some solution that is monetized. So that's exactly what Leo said to me, that he could see that as well. And I think we all had those nights where it felt like something, like that article says, that invisible hand guiding us. Now, we don't have concrete proof that this is happening in 2K, but just from a casual observation of playing the game online and playing My Team, also coming back to My Team after some time away and opening up the promo packs that I've missed out because I haven't been firing up the mode as much this year, getting something in the promo packs that kind of, a good card in the promo packs quite randomly makes you think that it's being done to say, oh look, you actually got a good pull, why don't you buy another pack? It would not surprise me in the least if these mechanics are in 2K.
So that was the first thing that came to mind for you out of a personal experience, right?
Yeah.
And same with me. And I'm sure a lot of the community has experienced what I have in My Team. And, you know, we've talked about it before. I believe I got 7 to 10 duplicates of Cassie Russell in one of the more recent 2Ks. I think it was NBA 2K22 or NBA 2K23. And when I would get a good player from a pack, all of a sudden it would be one good player and then 10 really poor pack openings, really poor results. Nobody very high overall, or duplicates of players that I already have. How much you want to bet that the game somehow tracks if you have already pulled a decent player, right? And then that way, or a highly coveted player, and then that way they'll make your odds absolutely piss poor for the next 10 to 15 packs that you open. That was the first thing that came to mind when I was reading this article. So he gives an example here of how it would work. So if you're playing a live service game, especially on mobile or a free-to-play game, there's a good chance that winning or losing has little to do with your skill or luck. The outcome is decided before you even press the play button. The randomness is manipulated. In match 3 games, for example, the gems may seem pre-generated or random, while in reality, algorithms carefully choose the next gems to appear after each interaction to guarantee a near loss or near win situation when you run out of moves. The disclosed odds are fake. Spending money can backfire on you and actually make your game harder. A classic example is SBMM matchmaking in PvP games. If you spend money to make your character more powerful, you may initially face weaker opponents to feel empowered. But over time, you'll be matched against players who have also spent a lot and are equally or more powerful than you. So the first things that came to mind once again was my team for me. But the way they can implement these things are related to like loot box odds, pack odds, which I just mentioned, intentionally making a game more grindy, intentionally making a challenge harder. And do I think that Take-Two is doing that? I have absolutely no proof, no definitive proof that they are doing that. And I have no proof that EA Sports is doing that with any of their games. But would you put it past them?
Not at all.
Especially with the My Team and Ultimate Team modes and the amount of revenue that those modes generate, and the fact that people have proven through video sharing, through them on video opening packs, spending thousands upon thousands of dollars and not getting the player that they wanted on opening packs. So I just thought it was an incredibly interesting article and a very interesting take on these live service games and video games in general. So kudos to the writer, Adrian Lawrence.
Need to throw that in the show notes for sure, because as you say, he obviously knows what he's talking about. He explains it very well, and we can see examples of it, or we certainly believe we can perceive examples of this happening in 2K, in Live, and other EA Sports and 2K Sports games, obviously. And to your earlier point, these mechanics have existed in games for a long time. That way of balancing the game, frustrating you to the point where you want to keep winning, but it's not so frustrating that you want to give up on the game, but you want to keep going. Just one more pack, just one more session. I can do this. I can beat this game, or I can make this change. I can buy this upgrade or whatever and beat another player. So it's been in games for years. Goes back to the arcade days, obviously. Modern Vintage Gamer, as I've said before, shared that video in the show notes of a previous show when we talked about this, and on social media as well, and our Discord, that he's actually gone through the code of NBA Jam, the original NBA Jam, and shown the exact ways that the game is manipulated to do that. So the idea that developers these days would do the same thing even more morally questionably, I suppose, to generate recurrent revenue, yeah, I absolutely believe it.
And this is not a new phenomenon, right? We talked about the NBA Jam scenario. We talked about NBA Jam in the arcades. The problem is that it's just way easier to do it today.
Yeah,
and on
a
grander
predatory
scale, right? It's far more predatory. There's more ways to get in gamers' pockets and in innocent consumers' pockets, etc. And a lot of these companies are just absolutely taking full advantage of it.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So, Andrew, let's get to our first main topic. So, you asked the community, what's a basketball video game that others seem to really enjoy, but you've never been able to get into? And we did receive about 10 responses to that question, but I'm going to throw it over to you first, Andrew.
So I suppose I should tip things off with the game that I threw out there, the footage that I threw out there with that question, NBA 2K8. And I have drafted a Way Back Wednesday about 2K8. I've got one about 2K7 coming out before that. And you know me, Derek, I've really come to enjoy 2K6. 2K7 I've enjoyed as well. Our listeners can check out some footage that I've uploaded for 2K7 to our YouTube channel. In fact, this past week in the NLSC Top 10 Plays, my highlight in last week's Top 10 was from 2K7, a Kobe Bryant circus shot. So I've come to enjoy 2K6 and 2K7, working my way through that generation of games to see what I missed and to write about them for Way Back Wednesday, of course. And I just cannot get into 2K8. And I have touched on this in our previous show, and I said I was going to come back to it, keep coming back to it, and see if I could get into it. And it's just not happening, Derek. It just keeps frustrating me so much. And as I'll just pull a quote from the draft of the Way Back Wednesday that I've written about this, that it cheats like a spoiled, bratty child. It just doesn't feel fair, to the point of our earlier discussion, manipulating things behind the scenes, under the hood. The dribbling mechanics are not as good as the previous games. They just don't feel as good on the sticks to me. Just the way that the CPU feels so unbalanced, the way it so very blatantly cheats to win games. I haven't had a loss in that game that's felt fair. That's felt like, oh, I've failed to execute. I've played poorly. It's been the CPU pulling the strings, just being a complete cheat about it. But at the same time, I can see the good points, and I know that that was a very well-received game, although I have gone back and looked at some of the reviews, Derek, and they have mentioned issues that I've had with it. So even back then, contemporary reviews were noticing these issues. But it is a game that a lot of people do enjoy. I do see the good bones of the game. I do see the positive aspects. It feels like a game I should be able to get into, and I should enjoy, but I just haven't been able to. And even in our session with it, Derek, I had fun with the co-op play, and that's the best way to play that game, because you can kind of counteract the CPU's cheese. But even as we were closing out that game, the CPU was trying to come back and cheat us out of that victory. So yeah, that game is just one 2K8 I just can't get into.
So NBA 2K8, in my opinion, is the most canned 2K on PS3, Xbox 360. It is the one with the most side-by-sides. You notice that every single time you try to drive, you're absolutely locked into your defender.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you guys are just going right side by side, and your defender will speed up with you every step of the way, right? And it looks very awkward, and you don't get that on NBA 2K6 or NBA 2K7. And then they lightened it up for NBA 2K9, and then NBA 2K10 basically has none of that. And then NBA 2K11 has unbelievably strong gameplay without being flooded with canned sequences. And then obviously 2K12, 2K13, and then 2K14, which was also, big on the PC. Those games are just incredibly strong gameplay wise and not even close to as canned as 2K8. So while I really enjoy NBA 2K8 overall, I love the look of it. I think the graphics are unbelievable. I love the camera options. I love the in-game options. I love the way shooting feels in NBA 2K8. I love how some of the animations play out. The biggest drawback of that game, and I know you, Andrew, I've connected with you on so many basketball games, your biggest pet peeve is not having control.
Yes.
Right? And on NBA 2K8, like I said, for the PS3 gen 2Ks, it has the most canned moments. And like you stated, it often feels like the computer cheats. So I totally understand that pick. Even though I like NBA 2K8, I get it.
And that's the thing, I can see the positive attributes of that game, and they introduced more signature animations that year. And I said it to you in our chat that I'll pull off something really cool, and that'll draw me in, and I'll think, oh, I've got it now, and this is cool, I'm enjoying this, I'm having fun. And then the next few sequences, the next few possessions will just remind me, oh, this is why this is why it frustrates me so much.
And we had a blast when we played against each other on NBA 2K7, and it was Keon Dooling versus TJ Ford. And that game is up on the NLSC YouTube, the highlights of that game. And you can see how free-flowing and fun that gameplay is, Andrew, right? And how infrequent the canned sequences are. In fact, we need to connect on that game again, because we just had a blast when we played that game, except you're not allowed to use Keon Dooling because you'll score 40 or 50 points with him in like 4-minute quarters.
Yeah.
But
Dunk
yeah, that was, yeah, exactly. He is Dominique Wilkins on steroids in NBA 2K7. So for me, Andrew, NBA 2K24, right? So there's people in the community on the Discord who have said that, yeah, they are enjoying it. A lot of people are saying they enjoy the gameplay, but they don't like the predatory mechanics, right? Or the pack odds, etc. But they're saying, sometimes they're saying positive things about the gameplay. We've seen responses to some of the mailbag questions from the NLSC in relation to what have you been playing, what are you enjoying, etc. And there'll always be several responses. I'm really into NBA 2K24's gameplay and playing my NBA eras. etc. But man, I just can't stand that game, Andrew. I can't stand it on the PS4 gen, on PC, on the PS5 Series X. I just think the gameplay is so damn canned. The skating is at an all-time high. Just the foot planning is so poor. You're being sucked into players all over the court, whether you're on offense or defense. I feel the classic team content is piss poor quality. I just don't think they tried on it very much at all. The signatures are wrong across the board. The players don't play like their real life counterpart for the most part. So whenever I put on 2K24, regardless of which gen, I just get super bummed out. I mean, I couldn't even stay interested in my team and building my roster. I couldn't, have fun playing Exhibition with my brother or Legends like we usually do. We usually play like a My League Legends season, and we couldn't even get into that this year. So I just think the gameplay has really gone downhill. And for me, I could never get into NBA 2K24 like some others did.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I'll make a blanket statement. 2K21 to 2K24, for me, obviously they have been very popular. There has been criticism of all of those games, naturally. And it has ramped up with some of the mechanics and, of course, the predatory mechanics as well. But even just focusing on the gameplay, people have been criticizing that as well. But at the same time, they are very popular. Lots of people have been playing them each and every year, still playing some of the older titles from a couple of years ago. And a lot of people are playing 2K24. As you said, we pretty much very frequently get submissions from 2K24 in the top 10 plays of the week to that point. So people are definitely playing that game and enjoying it and producing some pretty fun highlights as well. Let's put it out there. But yeah, I just can't get into it. I don't like the shooting. I don't like the feel of the player movement. I don't like the feel of the dribbling controls. I fired up 2K24 the other day to get a screenshot of Jaylen Brown, the Finals MVP, of course, Derek, to post on the bulletin about the latest patch, the Season 8 patch that came out last week. And even just firing up for a few minutes to get a screenshot for the featured image in an article, a news post, Derek, it didn't make me want to play any more than that.
Yeah, you wanted to shut that thing down. Yeah, so for me, I'd say between NBA 2K 21, 22, 23, and 24, probably my favorite out of those is NBA 2K 22. And I wasn't super fond of that one, but it is the one that my brother and I spent the most time on. It's before they absolutely obliterated the shooting. Like, the shooting was acceptable in many ways, I would say, in NBA 2K 22. It's before the game really ended up being canned, and there was less ball warping in NBA 2K22 than in NBA 2K24. I felt like the post game was more sound, etc. So, like, I would say out of those, 2K22 is probably my favorite. So what's next for you?
Well, it's not the most popular game that's come along, the most popular basketball game that's come along, but I will say NBA Live 19, because it does have a very dedicated following to this day, which is kind of cool to see and demonstrates that people very much do want an alternative to NBA 2K, as we've said before. But, I mean, we've talked about how the last patch, or even the last two patches, really messed with the game, but even before that, I just couldn't quite get into Live 19. There was too much focus on the streets, as I've said before, not enough focus on the NBA side of things. I wanted that NBA alternative to NBA 2K at the time, and still do. That is important to have that hook of the streets, obviously, but they just really ignored too much of the NBA in that game, having the street moves in the NBA gameplay, not having as much polish after so many years of trying to rebuild that series, not having the depth in the modes, and of course then they ruined the shooting. But even from the start, I liked it. I don't think it's a horrible game, but after Live 18, it was definitely a letdown. And a lot of people do like Live 19. There is that dedicated fan base, as I said, but I've just never been able to get into that game. Live 18, though, I do really like.
So Andrew and I didn't share any notes on this before we got online to record this episode. NBA Live 19 was next on my list, actually. I enjoyed the demo gameplay. I even live streamed it when it was still the demo. I uploaded gameplay footage. People really enjoyed that gameplay footage. You can check that out on my D for Free YouTube channel. But after the game got patched, that game just was not playable for me. And I say that honestly, just really not playable. And when I say things like not playable, it means the game frustrated me more than I was enjoying it. with my time with it. I think that the game became incredibly canned. I feel like the game became more sluggish, less reactive. I felt like the passing and catching animations were incredibly delayed and slow, and they ruined any flow of the offense. Every single drive to the hoop was completely random to me, and the player would just flick up a shot off balance, out of control, shots that would never go in real life, and it would feel like they would fall the majority of the time. And I could never feel good about it, Andrew, because I didn't control any of that drive, right? I just pushed one button and my player flung himself into a specific direction and then just, flicked the ball up towards the hoop. And then, I always knew when I was going to get a block a couple seconds before I got one, because the sequence was so canned. And then when I drove, I knew I was going to get blocked a couple seconds before I did, because you could see the canned animation about to play out. I felt like there was no explosiveness on the dribble. Like, go ahead and try to do a quick crossover like you see in real life, like a shifty crossover in NBA Live 19. Good luck, because pretty much all of those dribbles are small dribbles covering a small space, and it feels more aesthetic than effective. Same thing with spin moves. Same thing with pretty much everything you do on the floor. So for me, I feel like NBA Live 19 was good during the demo. Like, I was enjoying it for the most part, and it was a new basketball gaming experience for me. But yeah, those patches killed it for me. And then now, today, I enjoy NBA Live 15 and Live 16 far more than NBA Live 19. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, those games, they surprised us when we revisited those. They held up better than I remembered. And there is roughness there is some of the heaviness to the movement of the players. But once you know what you're doing, it does work out a lot better. And you don't have those canned moments. That is a big deal for you and I. As you say, when you're getting that block. And it does take away some of the excitement.
Yeah, and NBA Live 19 too. Press steal to foul is like the worst it's ever been in the NBA Live series, and it might be the worst in basketball video game history. Push the steal button, even if you time it right, and basically you're gonna hug the offensive player. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I'll give my next one and I'll throw it back over to you. This one's gonna be weird. You probably don't know about this, but NBA Live 99, and I'm not saying now because I enjoy it more today, and I obviously enjoy it more on PC because of the because it's in 60 FPS, it's super smooth, it just plays and looks better overall. But when I got NBA Live 99 for PlayStation 1 back in the day, I was consistently comparing it to NBA Fast Break 98. And of course, everybody was playing NBA Live for the most part at the time, Andrew, right? NBA Live was it in basketball gaming. Sure, there were other options, but NBA Live reigned supreme. And I was always like, I don't understand what the big deal is here, right? I think NBA Fast Break 98 blows this game away from a graphics perspective, soundtrack, the in-game options, the interfaces. I just thought Fast Break 98 blew NBA Live 99 away. And then the original NBA 2K came out shortly after NBA Live 99, and it's like, this game blows away NBA Live 99 to me at the time from, again, graphics and in gameplay perspective. And also, Andrew, I told you this before, NBA Live 98 PC, loved it. We modded it. It was really smooth gameplay-wise on the PC. And when we got NBA Live 99 for the PS1, I was also comparing it to NBA Live 98, and I'm like, this is not an upgrade, right? We thought NBA Live 98 was still better. So, NBA Live 99, it was the most popular game out at the time, but there were several other basketball video games that I enjoyed more while other people stuck with NBA Live 99.
That's interesting, yeah. And of course, Live 99 coming out during the lockout when that was in effect and having to launch with 98 season rosters. And look, I love the 98 season, obviously, Derek, being the last dance and all. But when you have that new game and you don't have the new rosters, and 2K12 was able to get away with it because, well, a shorter lockout for a start, official patches on every single platform, official roster updates on every platform, only PC for 99 back in the day. And also you had all that Legends content, the historical content in 2K12 that it launched with. You had that NBA's Greatest to kind of tide us over until the new rosters came through. A great marketing decision there. Obviously, they had the Jordan Challenge the year before, but to continue that with the lockout looming and then coming into effect was a great decision for 2K12. I see where you're coming from, though. I do think that 99 is an improvement on 98, but it's also another game that I appreciate a lot more in hindsight. Live 2000, fantastic game, but Live 99, not too far behind it. There's a lot of stuff that you see in 2000 that did start in 99, but at the same time, I definitely see where you're coming from. And if you're playing it on console, not having that frame rate, not having those updates, and also coming from Fast Break 98, NBA Action 98 on PC, of course, no, that makes a lot of sense.
I will say this, though. Now that I have NBA Live 99 on PC, now that it does look better, now that it's in smooth 60 FPS, now that it's more reactive on the sticks, all of that. And I even have mods in there, the amazing retro mods that were created by Lutz and whatnot. So today, I actually enjoy NBA Live 99 PC over NBA Live 98. But at the time, I was like, this game is not in my rotation.
Well, that's why it's important to give games a second look with fresh eyes, and certainly if you can get a better version of it and better hardware to play it on. Sometimes trying to play games back in the day on a desktop that wasn't quite powerful enough to play on maxed out settings or whatever, then it is worth going back and revisiting these games, which is why we do it for the podcast and Way Back Wednesday.
Exactly. So what's up next for you?
Well, conversely for me, it probably is the early NBA 2K games, and I do appreciate them, having played them more in recent years and connecting with you on them, but a lot of the mechanics that they had at the time, the free throw mechanics are the ones that I will always bring up, Derek. I was playing some ESPN NBA 2K5 and ESPN NBA Basketball to cover the early 24/7 modes, and trying to shoot free throws in those games, you know how much I hate that free throw system, Derek, and yeah, I still can't get it to work. Works a little bit better without the lag that my connection has on Parsec. And as always, I must say that it's my connection in Australia with our terrible internet. But I still can't get, even locally with no lag whatsoever, no input lag at all, I just can't get that free throw shooting to work. And a lot of people were saying that the early 2K games were far more realistic than the arcadey NBA Lives. And I must completely disagree on that. There is definitely some what people call arcadey moments in those early 2K games. I don't think it ruins them. I think it does make them exciting to have those dunks. But as far as realism goes, they were kind of really on par at the very least in those early days. You didn't like
Vladimir Radvanovich on ESPN NBA 2K5 when we played on it, throwing it down like Sean Kemp over and over again from like the free throw line?
I mean, if
that didn't do it for you?
That's the thing. If you're going to say that's more sim than Live 2005, I really must respectfully disagree. Which people were making those arguments. But again, I see the quality of those games, and that's the other key point of this question, is that other people were able to get into those games, understandably so, and I do see the positive attributes. I do enjoy them more nowadays, but I just can't get into those games as much. But I still want to give them a go. Much like 2K8, I want to go back to those games and continue to give them a chance, and especially now that I've got them set up on the emulator, and they work in beautiful 60 frames per second, to your point. I will absolutely give them a go. It is important to keep an open mind and give these games a second chance. But yeah, those early 2K games have never quite grabbed me. I will also throw it as an honorable mention. Live 2003 is a game that I've gone back and forth on over the years, and a lot of people really got into that more than I did back in the day. I enjoy it now more, now that I appreciate it for what it is. It wasn't as realistic as I wanted at the time, and I really did sour on that game as I continued to play it because it just wasn't as realistic as I wanted, was bothered by the blocks. I know people like them, and that's the point, that I can see that there's a lot of fun in 2003, and I can have that fun now, but I really did sour on that game because it wasn't the realistic style of gameplay that I was hoping that the sim games would go towards, and Live 2004 was such a welcome change of pace for me.
Yeah. So about the realism of the early 2Ks and early 2000s NBA Lives, I think that when right stick dribbling and right stick triple threat was adopted in the Live series, you automatically felt like you had more control in the Live games. Right. And I think that both games had arcade elements, whether it was related to pace or related to players dominating that shouldn't be dominating, or players taking off from ungodly distances that, they weren't even super athletes
Rocket
in
dunks,
the NBA.
yeah.
We mentioned, players like Vladimir Radmanovich or, my brother Mark scoring 40 points and grabbing 30 rebounds and dominating on dunks with Calvin Booth in the NBA Live games, right? So, it happened in both games, and both series did a poor job balancing the gameplay of players with height, right? You can often dominate way too much with big men in the 2K and Live series, and the early, mid, and late 2000s Lives and 2Ks, and then in many of the early 2010s 2Ks as well. Sometimes the big guys can be a little bit too dominant. But the point that I was going to make is the reason why we preferred the NBA Live series in the early mid 2000s is because we had more control over the action.
Agreed.
And that was just so important. We felt like we were able to use the stars like they did, like they played in real life. So the last mention before we get to the community's responses is NBA 2K20. And this was a somewhat popular game in the 2K series. Obviously, Thunder Shack has his retro mods for this game. It was heavily modded in the NLSC community. And just the way the players run, Andrew, in that game, and they're all hunched over, almost like dragging their hands on the ground. That's how hunched over they are. It looks absolutely stupid. I don't know what the developers were thinking with that, but no athletes and no people run like that. I don't care what their age is and whatnot. And I could never get over the player movement on that game. The ball warping is ridiculous. The players are constantly jerking around the court, like their herky-jerky movement. The game is just so unbalanced from a player movement perspective, NBA 2K20, that every time I put it on, it was just like, this game is driving me absolutely nuts. I can't even look at this. And when Andrew and I are talking about these games, we're not trying to say, how dare you enjoy this game, right? We're saying that we wish we could have gotten the enjoyment you got out of these games, right? Because we never purchase a basketball game to not like it or to be frustrated with it. So I know that there's a lot of people out there that enjoyed 2K20, including Thunder Shack, including people that use his rosters. But for me, it was absolutely terrible, and I have trouble picking it up.
And funnily enough, NBA 2K20 is the last game in the series that I really felt hooked on, although that might just be because I was still on the grind and I was still in a rut, I suppose, and just out of habit grinding in my career each and every year. But at the same time, I did like 2K20 for what it was, but I wouldn't say that it's better than 2K19. I do think there was definitely elements of that game that were rushed. 2K21, for me, it's just been downhill since then. But to your point, it was relatively popular. A lot of people did play it a lot. And I definitely see where you're coming from by not getting the enjoyment because, those criticisms, even though I do like that game or did enjoy it at the time, at least, those criticisms are absolutely valid. I can't disagree with them. And like you said, it's not a case of we're saying that these are objectively bad games, because many of them are not. And you'll see the examples that people give. I would say that they are not bad games, but sometimes they just don't resonate with you.
Exactly. I will say this. I think that NBA 2K19 was the last great 2K, at least in my household, because it combined still some awesome player movement aspects from the old motion system that we loved from NBA 2K17, 16, 15, and some from 14, etc. And then added a lot of great gameplay additions, including some new animations, including little, off the back foot fadeaways that look really cool, new dunk animations, and they weren't implemented in a canned way. They look really good in that game. And I think that overall it's the last game that had intelligent defense in the NBA 2K series. I think that the AI on defense is incredibly strong, and on offense, the AI can absolutely kick your butt, and you don't feel like they're cheating the game. You feel like you're really getting your butt kicked by the AI on 2K19. So yeah, NBA 2K19 is my favorite 2K since NBA 2K17. So let's see what the community had to say.
So first up we have Bucky T says, current title 2K24, past title 2K6. Says 2K24 doesn't need explanation for obvious reasons. 2K6, I'm not sure if maybe I had a lot going in my life at that time or what, but I was never able to sink my teeth into that game. Willing to give it a revisit soon. And I would definitely recommend that. 2K6 is a game that's really captured my imagination. The Xbox 360 version, although the PS2 version is pretty strong as well, there's a lot of content that it shares with the 360 version, so they were still putting a lot of effort into that at the time, including the Road to the EBC, which I recently played through and finished, Derek, on the Xbox 360. And yeah, I would definitely recommend that. 2K24, again, a lot of people are playing that and enjoying it and making great highlights with it, but yeah, I just can't get into that gameplay.
Yeah, NBA 2K6, I know where he's coming from because I had to put it down due to frustration the last time I played it. I think that the passing oftentimes in that game is too floaty. I feel like players are way too quick in the passing lanes, and you can try to make the most simple pass and the defender will transfer to the ball. I feel like dribbling is just absolutely hit or miss in that game, and you're very limited from a dribbling perspective. And I feel like getting block shots and protecting the rim is an exercise in frustration. So yeah, I understand where he's coming from. However, I can still pick up NBA 2K6 and have a good time. Like I still think that it was a strong release for Take-Two for the NBA 2K series, and I see its strong points, but I definitely still see where he's coming from.
And he raises another great point there. We often talk about how our nostalgia for games reminds us of a significant time in our life, and how, I mentioned many times, including last week, the how Live 2002, I connect that to the last year of high school and kind of that memorable time in my life of changing times and whatnot, and finishing up with high school and entering the real world and so forth. But if you do have a lot going on at the time, if a game doesn't provide that escape that you want and that joy that you want to take you away from your day job or school or whatever, then yeah, I can see where he's coming from. That it's not that you've got a bit too much going on, and the game doesn't delight or distract you from the stresses of your day-to-day life. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
If you only have a couple hours a week that you can play, you need to be pretty picky about your selection. Right. And NBA 2K6 was not something that he wanted to spend his time with. And NBA 2K24, probably the same for him. He's like, why, I have a limited time and
why waste it?
I don't have that. Yeah. Why waste it? Exactly.
Next up we have NC to the Bone says, NBA Live 19 for me. There's some good things here and there, but lacked so much. And that succinctly sums up what I was trying to say about Live 19. Yeah, it just doesn't have the depth, doesn't have the overall quality of gameplay. You can see the good elements in that game, and it's not I've played much worse games, Derek, in the NBA Live series or otherwise. Let's just throw Live 07 out there, as always, as kind of the bottom of the barrel there. But yeah, Live 19, like he says, good things here and there, but just lacking so much.
There wasn't enough love put into the NBA portion of that game. And I think that's why NBA Live 15 and Live 16 are more enjoyable to me, because it felt like the focus was on the NBA aspect of those games, from the atmosphere, the graphics overall. I think they were better in both of those games than NBA Live 19. But even just the way the players played on the court and the NBA action you felt when you were playing those games. I think that the NBA portion of NBA Live 19 was lower priority than getting people online and into the one, right? And whatnot. And I think that was a huge mistake by the developers.
And you can see that disconnection between those, I guess we can call ourselves traditional gamers, the ones that love the NBA Sim aspect of NBA Sim titles, and those that are more interested in the online scene, the competitive arena, that when you start focusing on that experience to the detriment of the traditional offline, either single player or offline multiplayer experience, then, and the NBA, and simulating the NBA with that much depth and realism, it just really falls apart.
100%. And there's the young crowd wants to play with the NBA the most as well. And I don't care what anybody says about that. The NBA is still the draw, right? The people are by the thousands and often by the millions. They're looking in on, what the players are saying about how they were rated in the game. They're looking forward to using their favorite team on the court, whether it be in online matchups or in a My NBA or in a Play Now game. The NBA is still the draw. Their favorite players, their favorite teams, their favorite personalities, all of that. So the NBA still needs to be at the forefront when creating these games.
And we have two more people mentioning 2K24 here. Garva says 2K24, the gameplay seems great. Andrew D says the current version of 2K, it was great when it first came out, but hasn't been great since NBA Live went away. And that kind of lines up with what we've been saying, Derek, that when Live 19, for all of its warts, when Live, for now, ended with that release, and 2K was once again unopposed, and in a very strong market position, and with well-established predatory mechanics, then it was just all downhill from there, for many of us. But at the same time, a lot of people do enjoy those games, but for us, it's just so hard to get into them.
Yeah, you notice that NBA 2K19 is very strong in many areas of gameplay where the series is not now. Well, NBA 2K19 was competing directly with NBA Live 19, right? So my opinion is that more than likely Take-Two had to up their game for NBA 2K19 because now they had a direct competitor in that space. And good, I'm glad that NBA Live was around then, and I hope that EA Sports comes back with NBA Live or a college basketball game, or somebody else gets into the NBA 5-on-5 space, and I hope it happens soon, because like I said on a prior show, competition is good for everybody. And it's good for consumers. I think and oftentimes it's good for businesses as well, because it forces them to make changes. It forces them to up their game. It forces them to create a better product, Andrew. So I do hope that there's competition in the space soon.
And just to throw it out there, because some people will say that Live wasn't true competition in terms of quality to 2K for many years, I suppose going back to the mid-2000s, really. But even just having Live there for 2K to want to crush, to want to destroy, made them up their game. So even if they weren't strong competition so much as being that viable alternative for a lot of people, or matching them in sales or critical reception, as the case may be, the simple fact that 2K wanted to crush NBA Live and there was some kind of opponent for them to go up against and want to beat, did work wonders for the quality of the game.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have a couple of people here that mention 2K14. Lagoa, modder in our community of course, says NBA 2K14, Xbox One and PlayStation 4, never touch. And Two Twing Loco says 2K14, both gens, I've tried so hard to enjoy it, but over time I go back to disliking it. And 2K14, obviously a very popular release, very heavily modded release on PC in our community, and I've been loving 2K14 on PS4, as you know, Derek, and as our listeners know as well, and readers of my articles too. But at the same time, for many years, I didn't like those games. They didn't grab me at first either, so I do understand not liking those games. I totally get it.
So Lagoa, I know for a fact that he likes the PC version of NBA 2K14. In fact, he created the global that I still use today, the global mod that gives better progressive sweat and whatnot on the players. So I will say this, and I've said it before. I think that NBA 2K14 for Xbox One and PS4, it's a very strong title, and I still enjoy it today. However, there are a couple gameplay frustrations that are in that version that are not in the PS3/PC version. One, there's definitely more momentum in relation to movement on the Xbox One PS4 version, where you feel like you're kind of sliding into position. The foot planning is not quite as good on that version as it is on the PS3/PC version. And I would say that overall, the gameplay, in my opinion, on PS3 is just overall a bit tighter. I think that you have a little bit of less suction, a little bit less skating overall, like I mentioned, a little less forward momentum when you're moving. And I would say that overall rebounding also feels a bit better on the PC and PS3 version, as opposed to feeling somewhat canned and a little out of control on the Xbox One PS4 version. But for me, both of those versions are strong. Like, I love both of those games.
And that was one of my early pet peeves with 2K14 on PS4. It did feel like it was overshooting on every time I tried to move, defensively slide, or whatever. I have gotten used to it and do really enjoy that gameplay, obviously. But no, I absolutely see where he's coming from there. And of course, it launched with less content. Not to the extent of a Live 06 on Xbox 360 or even a Live 14 on PS4 X1, but there was less content, and of course you brought in MyGM with paywalled basic functionality in the RPG approach to that mode, which not everybody was a fan of, and it was definitely the right move to bring back My League as that sandbox alternative in 2K15. But yeah, I definitely get not liking 2K14 and not being able to get into it, despite other people really loving it. Coach D says 2K11 gameplay wasn't good. 2K13 is when the series really took off. And you know what? I'd throw out 2K11 as an honorable mention, certainly for me at first, because I was still trying to get into the 2K series with the isomotion and the lack of right-stick dribbling. And to that point, 2K13 is when they brought in right-stick dribbling. 2K11 was very popular right from the very start. It did take me a while to get into it and going back to it and giving it that second chance and really committing to getting used to dribbling controls without the right stick. But I also see where he's coming from, because 2K13 is what made the series so more accessible to me. But the funny thing about that, Derek, the ironic thing, is that getting into 2K13 and having that affinity, developing that affinity for the 2K series, is what has allowed me to go back and make the most of the original isomotion.
Yeah, and they did such a great job with right stick dribbling and triple threat implementation on NBA 2K13, and it was the first game they ever implemented that on. It was new to the series at that point, and I still put that game on and just absolutely love pulling off dribble moves, spin moves, moves in the post, all of that stuff, using that right stick. I think that the biggest issue with NBA 2K13 is how hard it is to get blocks at the rim, and oftentimes the game will even penalize you for putting your hand through the ball. You'll try to go up for a block, and you will time it perfectly, and the player will still dunk it on you, even though your hand is right on the ball or through it. It's like the game is like, nope, we're not going to allow you to get a block today. In fact, we're not going to allow you to get a block this entire game. So take that. And also another issue with that game was the auto-adjusted layups at the rim. You wouldn't even adjust it. It would basically be you drive to the hole and a defender will come over to try to contest you, and the game would auto-adjust the layup for you to avoid the block. And a lot of times you would hit that shot and you didn't really have control over that sequence, and the defender was SOL because they weren't going to be allowed to block it. So I think that those were the two biggest issues with that game. But as far as being an overall strong product from a gameplay perspective, a presentation perspective, from a options perspective, game modes, etc., I think that NBA 2K13 is actually one of the best in the series, in my opinion.
Of course, the Jay-Z presentation is hit or miss for a lot of people. I think that was definitely very much modded on PC, of course. And those issues that you mentioned with 2K13, some of them were cleaned up in 2K14, the blocks, etc. And I think it's one of those interesting things where, even though that is an issue, it also allowed people to score easier at the rim. And sometimes when you can exploit a game like that and feel that you can dominate a game, when that's cleaned up in subsequent years, you don't enjoy the game as much because you actually come to enjoy the exploit. And I think we've seen that over the years where when games have become more realistic and they really were hitting the sweet spot with the sim gameplay, that people perhaps didn't want as much realism as they thought.
I'll say this, though. I don't want to hear anybody telling me that NBA 2K24 is more sim than some of the games in the past, or that it's more realistic, or that the reason people are frustrated is because the game is too sim. That is definitely not the case with NBA 2K24, and I'm not going to go over all the reasons because I've said them on so many different past episodes. But yeah, let's not kid ourselves. The game is just full of artificial boosts. It's full of canned moments. It's full of suction. It's full of let's just put it this way. Give me a break.
Yeah, I'll play 2K8 before I play 2K24. I'll keep trying to give 2K8 a go before getting into this year's game. Just cannot get into it at all. We've got a few more responses here. One more from X. Joshua, Donatello in the forum, of course, says Double Dribble for NES. I could never get the hang of it. And it is obviously a very primitive title. One of your first games, Derek, if not your first. We've talked about that on previous shows. And I get where he's coming from, because it certainly is primitive, and if it was your introduction to basketball, then it's certainly, I think you've got more nostalgia there and more mastery of it. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy Double Dribble, but I also see where he's coming from.
Playing the computer is very interesting in that game, so if that was his experience, that could have turned him off. And one of the reasons why is because, as I stated on a previous show when we were talking about Double Dribble, the steal system is basically just you run through somebody's body and you push a button to get a steal. But the computer will constantly just like rip the ball from you over and over and over again when you play against them, especially if you're playing it on the higher difficulty levels. And it can get super frustrating because all you're trying to do is, just get it past half court, and the computer is just running through your body and stealing it. It's also very easy for the computer to constantly intercept passes. So if his experience with Double Dribble was against the computer and he wasn't playing against another human, I could see why that was a turnoff.
Some games really are designed to be multiplayer or co-op.
Oh, 100%.
And jumping over to Facebook now for one more response, Royce says, NBA Jam by Acclaim, the 2003 game, also known as NBA Jam 2004, of course. I owned it, played it, and didn't think much of it. Seemed to be all dunks, no jam-like strategy for three-point shooters, defense, blocks. I wound up trading my copy. When I hear about this game, I think, did I play the same game? I don't get it, aside from it being an NBA Jam and the secret teams and legends teams, and courts are all well and good, but as a game, I don't see it. Maybe I should try it again. I can say that it works superbly on the PS2 emulator, Derek and Royce, if you want to give it a shot on there, 60 frames per second once again. But it is probably the best NBA Jam game that Acclaim made. So some might say NBA Jam Extreme is up there as well, but the 2003 game, NBA Jam 2004, it's solid, but I totally get it, because it is not the best Jam game. Midway and EA Sports made the best NBA Jam games.
I don't think that was a big hit either. I don't think NBA Jam 2004 knocked it out of the park with consumers. I'd have to go back and look at the reviews. I did play it. I did complete the challenge mode where you would get like the black and white filter when you were playing the classic Celtics, etc. I remember spending time with that game, but I don't remember loving it, and I don't remember super positive reception. So correct me if I'm wrong there.
It might just be that he's seen some more positive remarks about the game, because I've seen people mention it as an overlooked game, and I guess it kind of is, and it does have its strong points, but no, I'm with him, that I'm not a huge fan of it. I appreciate it, and I think they did some cool things, but it's not the strongest Jam gameplay. And as I've said before, Jam works better 2-on-2. Street works great 3-on-3, Jam is better 2-on-2.
Oh, no, 100%. I also want to point out that it wasn't anything with the modes or even the graphics with NBA Jam 2004 that was kind of a turnoff for me. It was just more the gameplay. I felt like the gameplay was super stale. I thought the way the players went up for alley-oops was just kind of ridiculous and slow, and it wasn't very exciting. I just felt like the gameplay in that game was not exciting or super fun. So that's my take on it.
And jumping into the Discord for one more now, Juicy Shackmeat says, this may be blasphemy, but frankly, I cannot 100% get into NBA Jam and its spiritual successors, Hoops, Showtime, etc. I'm not sure if it's too arcade for me, or if I prefer at least 3 players per team. The latter maybe lean more towards NBA Street. And of course that is very blasphemous, and we will ban you from the Discord. No, of course not. Yeah, as popular as NBA Jam is, I have seen people say that before, and Street does resonate with some people more than Jam does. So you're definitely not alone there, Juicy Shackmeat. And I think that's a great example. The Jam is extremely popular. We've talked about the popularity of the arcade version, of course, and the home ports, fantastic home ports as well. But no, that's a great example of a popular game and not really being able to get into it for whatever reason. And maybe it is not quite as much of the arcade balance as you would like, Juicy Shackmeat. Like you said, maybe it's too arcade for him, or he prefers that 3-on-3 action. I love Jam, I do love Street, but Jam, I guess I grew up with those games, so I do have a preference for the Jam style.
Get him out of here. Has he been banned yet? Did we ban him yet?
I'll take care of it, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I knew you would be all over that. No, so I have to agree with him in a sense, and here's why. So I think the only NBA Jam that competes with NBA Street Volume 2 from a gameplay and overall immersion perspective is NBA Jam on Fire Edition, right? So I would agree that I think that NBA Street Volume 2 it gets me. And I love all the options at my disposal from a gameplay perspective. I love all the dribbling moves that I can do, all the different block animations and different types of blocks in general that you can do in that game. I like the way shooting feels. I love the way the AI plays and competes, and I love game breakers, all of that stuff. So I totally see where he's coming from, because I think the only game that has enough immersion on the sticks in the NBA Jam series to compete with that specific game is NBA Jam on Fire Edition. Now, I will say this. NBA Jam on Fire Edition has the best mode in arcade and or street basketball history, in my opinion. That road trip mode and how the unlockables work and all the different challenges and how much time you can spend on that game and just get completely lost in it. I think NBA Jam on Fire Edition definitely wins there. But if I had to choose between NBA Jam on Fire Edition and NBA Street Volume 2, that's tough, Andrew.
Yeah.
That's tough, because the way I usually say it is NBA Street Volume 2 is the greatest street basketball video game of all time, and NBA Jam on Fire Edition is the greatest NBA arcade hoops game of all time.
And it is a different atmosphere, obviously, a different approach, different style to that to the arcade style of gameplay. Of course, my argument is always that, apart from the quality of the NBA Jam games, that without NBA Jam to pave the way, and I suppose even to that extent arch rivals before that, then we wouldn't have the arcade games that we have today. Street did its own thing and did it very well. It also took the right cues from NBA Jam in that respect. The great thing about Street is that it's not just a Jam knockoff, a Jam clone, an inferior Jam clone as some other arcade basketball games were. And they had their strong points as well. Things like Looney Tunes B-Ball, but I wouldn't say that is on par with NBA Jam. Barkley's Shut Up and Jam, again, has its good points and its fun moments, but it is not NBA Jam. But the other thing about NBA Jam, of course, is that it is artificially difficult at times, and that can be too frustrating for people, and I totally get it, because sometimes playing the original NBA Jam games, we wanted to keep playing until we got a win, but we put it down after that because, okay, we've been challenged enough for one day.
Yeah, I do want to point something out. So obviously, arch rivals, and then NBA Jam, and NBA Jam specifically because of just the high-flying dunks and the pace and all of that stuff. Obviously, there are things they spearheaded, ideas they spearheaded. But two things I want to say about that. One, that doesn't mean that somebody else wouldn't have thought of that in the future. Number two, that doesn't mean that you can not discredit, but take a game down a notch because they use those ideas and even improved on some of them, right? So like the way I look at it is NBA Street Volume 2 just took it to that next level, like the NBA Street series in general. They were able to, obviously with more advanced tech as well, but, be able to add more dunk animations, right? More block animations. They were able to make the gameplay more dynamic. They were able to use the best of what was included in NBA Jam, the original NBA Jam, and make it even better. So I see why he would say that. And it makes sense to me, because that's why I enjoy NBA Street Volume 2 overall from a gameplay perspective more.
Oh, sure. And just to clarify, I'm not saying that being the originator necessarily makes NBA Jam better. I mean, Bulls versus Blazers and Lakers versus Celtics came out before NBA Live, but NBA Live certainly improved on that formula. Just more the case that I think NBA Jam sometimes doesn't get credit as originating and kind of establishing some of the staples of the series, balance and having a great power up, an iconic power up, and everything. So it's one of those things where I think people say, "What's the appeal of Jam, or how is it so good?" And I think sometimes it's underrated in that respect, or certainly not appreciated by some people who I guess underrate its impact on basketball games.
Why is it so good? Because it's high-flying NBA action using your favorite players from around the league, right?
Also, Tim
your favorite
Kitzrow.
players and teams, and you got the exciting Tim Kitzrow on the mic, and there's a lot of reasons, right? And you and I were playing the original NBA Jam recently, and we're playing against the computer, and sure, yeah, it was challenging, and we did take a break from it. After a few games, but we were still having a blast, and there was a lot of great moments, and I broke the backboard and it got into the top 10 and all of that stuff. So I still think the original NBA Jam can be fun.
But thank you for all of those responses. Very interesting to hear the different games that didn't resonate. It's why I threw out that question, Derek, because 2K8 for me has been that game recently. So yeah, I was interested to see what other people had to say, and love the discussion as always. With that being said, Derek, let's talk about some real basketball.
So yeah, our second main topic. Hoopheads, do you have a real-life basketball memory you would like to share from playing pickup and or school hoops? Examples: a fight, epic game, game winner, playing in a special place, a great play, etc. So Andrew, I have a laundry list here. And when I start going over some of my stories, I'll try to summarize them, but I'll probably do about 3 or 4 real quickly at a time. So I'm going to throw it over to you first.
So I think I've mentioned this in a previous show. It might have been a while ago, though. But when I started really getting into basketball in 1996, year 6, in primary school here in Australia, it was the 96 season, obviously, and Arvydas Sabonis was a rookie in the NBA, at least. He was certainly very experienced at the international level. But it became tradition on our playground here to, whenever we shoot a hook shot, to yell out Sabonis. Now, you would think that it would be Kareem, obviously, and we did know about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, obviously, but for some reason, the popularity of Sabonis and his post moves and his, how people were really latching onto him, finally getting into the NBA and showing what he could do, even though he was technically could qualify for disability. That's how injured he was at that time. The Blazers team doctors have come out and said that in years since, that he was definitely hobbled at that time, but was still very effective on the court because of his immense skill. But yeah, shooting a hook shot on the playground there, on the blacktop, you'd yell out Sabonis.
That's hilarious because ours was yelling Hornacek when we took a 3. And the funny part is the first time we ever drew a court with chalk, we drew a 3-point line in our driveway, and we specifically would yell Hornacek for hours. Like we thought it was so funny. We would yell Hornacek every time we shot a 3. And to this day, when we use Hornacek on video games, we say after he hits a 3, we're like, well, he drew the court. He used chalk to draw the court, so yeah, he's a legendary shooter. But
he killed us a couple of times. He killed us a couple of times in our 2K10 session.
Oh yeah, I mean, if he's made properly, he should be a great 3-point shooter. So I'm going to go over a few quick ones, and then I'll throw it back to you. So one-on-one league in my driveway against my brothers, keeping stats. So I have 2 brothers. We're all close in age. At this time, when we were doing this, I was probably, 4'10", 4'11", and I was easily the smallest of the 3. I'm the youngest of the 3. And we got up to 44 games against each other. So we would just take turns playing against each other. And the person that wasn't playing was keeping stats, points, rebounds, steals, and blocks. And I was so small. I was 0-44, Andrew. I had not won one game. And they were loving it, right? Like their record was pretty even against each other. The games were competitive, and I was just getting smoked. Well, finally, in game 45, I beat my brother Nick in a game. It was a huge thing. It's like D is now 1-44, and they quit the season. They quit playing. They stopped the whole thing. We never played another game keeping track. All the stats stopped because I wasn't supposed to win, Andrew.
Right.
And so that's not a great memory for me, but yeah, I finally got over the hump and I beat one of them. Another one was local game where I wasn't picked, only by exception. So I went to a local park with my oldest brother, Mark, and these 2 guys wanted to play 2-on-2. And there was this guy at the park named Richie who was older than me and taller than me. And you know what? Mark, my oldest brother, probably thought he was better than me at that time. And instead of asking me to play, he said, Richie, can you play? And Richie had to leave. He had to go home. So as an exception, my brother Mark had to take little old me on his team. And I hit about 4 threes in that game and played probably the game of my life at that time. And we beat these older kids. And we still talk about that moment to this day because it was the first time that I was accepted as a choice for pickup. And then another one was local game where there was a bet on it. So once again, my brother Mark, this is when we were older and in high school, we went to a local park. And there were a bunch of cars parked behind the basketball hoop, so like behind the court. And people were betting on the games that were going on. And my brother Mark and I played against a kid who was on the high school basketball team with me and his friend, who everybody considered much better than my brother Mark at the time. I was the best player in the family at this point. I played on the team. My brother Mark was a lot shorter than me. He's 5'6". I'm 6 feet. I was 6 feet at the time. I'm 6'2" now, etc. And Mark played the game of his life, Andrew. He had a crossover that I did not think that was in his repertoire, and he had somebody fall. Like he broke somebody's ankles. Never seen him do it before in my entire life. The game winner was Mark falling to the tar on the ball because there was a loose ball, and he threw me an alley-oop from the ground, and I put it in the hoop. Obviously not a dunk, put it in the hoop, but it was a game winner. But yeah, people on the side were betting on the game. It was a really fun atmosphere to be a part of, and we won that game when we probably shouldn't have. So those are 3 quick stories for me. What else do you got?
Well, those are some fantastic stories, and what stands out to me is things like the game winner and and breaking ankles. The great thing about playing basketball, even if you don't make it to the pro level, as most of us obviously don't, but when you do something that you've seen on TV or you've seen the great players do, and no, you're not comparing yourself to them, obviously, and saying, oh, well, I hit a game winner, so I'm Michael Jordan, I'm Kobe Bryant. Obviously not. But when you do that as a kid, especially, and you pull off something that you've seen at the pro level and that your favorite players have done, what a great feeling that is. Like for one moment, for 1 second, you are his Anis, for example.
And we when we talk about it today, right?
Yeah.
All of these years later, we are still talking about that moment, or we'll text about it. We're constantly reminiscing. And I don't care if you played school hoops, if you played just with your family, or only in your driveway, or you went and you played on a travel team. I don't care. Like, those moments are so precious, right? So it doesn't matter how you played. There can be so many memories.
So flashing back to 1996 again, we were playing so often on the blacktop there at primary school, and one morning there was I guess it was a teacher strike that was only lasting just the morning while they were negotiating with the union or whatever, but we were allowed to come to school, and there was somebody doing playground duty, and we were just playing basketball. My best friend, who was also named Andrew, there were 3 Andrews in our friend group, actually, and we were all born October 8, 1984, within a week of each other, funnily enough. Very popular name, Andrew, in Australia, in mid-October 1984. But Andrew, M, and I were playing one-on-one for about an hour that morning, just having a great game back and forth. I, too, would keep my stats in that game, and I think I got 60 rebounds in that game. That was my wilt game,
Jesus.
if you will. We're playing for an hour one-on-one, so it's just the 2 of us getting stats against each other. But really, things like that, and watching the NBA, of course, at the time, but playing so often as we did, every opportunity we could get at recess and lunch, that really just established my love of basketball that year, which is why 96 is such a special year in my basketball fandom. And of course, that early foray into hoops and the early foray into any fandom was always among the best because it's so fresh and new and exciting. But yeah, I was just going all out with my basketball fandom that year.
Andrew the Stilt Begley.
Yeah.
60 rebound game and all that. So how fun is it to play one-on-one too, Andrew?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute blast. So I'm going to get to a few high school memories. So my sophomore year of high school, I was on JV and swinging up varsity. and I had a game winner at the JV level, and it was our first win of the season, and my brother Nick was at the game, and so were my grandparents. The ball got swung up to me at the top of the key. We were down by 2 points, and there was only about 5 seconds left, and I took a three and hit it right in somebody's face, nothing but net, and it was my first ever game winner. And I'll never forget that moment. My brother Nick still talks about that moment, and it was a big deal for our school because, once again, it was the first win of the year. And then the high school season opener, my junior year, I was on varsity, and we were against Biddeford. And again, we were Class A, so we were playing all the biggest schools in Maine. And Biddeford had a really talented group and really talented guards, and they ended up finishing that season pretty well. And I hit 4 threes in the second half. We ended up losing that game by, I think, 4 points. But I was relatively unknown still at that time because I didn't grow up in the system. I didn't do any of the camps growing up. I wasn't playing other sports for the schools, all of that stuff. So this was a home game. There was a lot of people there. It was the first game of the season, and just netting those 4 threes against a really good team at the highest level in Maine, that was a memory that I will never forget. And then high school game versus Nick Cantor Medley in Deering. We had about 1,500 people at the game. Our school gymnasium was packed. And Nick Cantor Medley, if you remember correctly, he ended up being on, I want to say, the Pistons and Orlando Magic summer teams. And then he ended up having an injury, and he ended up having a long career overseas, made millions of dollars. He also, if you remember correctly, played college basketball at Maryland with Steve Blake, right? Nick Cantor Medley was the small forward on those Maryland teams. But he put in about 40 on us, and there was one play where he was pissed off about the way we were playing defense because we were playing stall ball, and he got a steal and went the length of the court and took off and threw it down, and he slapped the glass. And when he slapped the glass, he got a technical foul. And I was the one who took the free throws off of his technical foul. And I know that sounds stupid, but that's a memory I'll never forget, in front of 1,500 people. And, I'm at the line and all eyes are on me, and I sunk both free throws. Yeah. And, this is a guy that had tryouts for the NBA, and if he hadn't gotten hurt, he probably would have played in the NBA. And then one more high school memory. Last game of my high school career, my senior year versus Massabesic, I had 28 points. And I said, screw it, and I am just going to let it fly in this game. And I hit 7 3-pointers, and I think I only missed one. I think I was 7 for 8 from the 3-point line. And it was one of those things where it's like, we had a rough season, and we weren't going to be playing in the tournament, and this is going to be the last game I ever play at the school level. I'm going to let it fly. And I felt like I, had my best performance of the year.
But those are really cool memories to that point when you can say that you played against somebody who made it to the big time or came very close to the big time, that you knew them before other people knew them, and that you played against them, and to have those memories of, like you say, hitting those free throws, that connection to his technical foul is that's still very entertaining.
Yeah, and I think that while I do have a lot of memories from my high school playing days, I actually have far more from playing as an adult, and memories that I actually cherish more because I was able to share them with friends, and I was able to share them sometimes with my brothers, etc. And I'll get into those in a minute. But what else do you got?
Well, I've mentioned on a previous show that one of my favorite memories of playing local league basketball as a teenager was hitting 3 threes and a driving layup to score 11 points in the last 2 minutes to lead us to a come-from-behind victory. And I did enjoy my time playing the local league. There was frustration. We ran into some kids who were also refereeing, and they weren't always the best referees. There was certainly some issues in our local league with that. It was always great when we had the older referees, the adults who were actually mature, but there were some frustrating moments there. But nevertheless, I did enjoy playing competitive, organized basketball, because before that I had just been playing at the schoolyard and with friends, etc. And one of the things that actually got me into playing competitively was trying out for my high school team in year 8, 1998, and not making the cut. And, of course, this was another situation where I thought, well, my hero, the great Michael Jordan, was also cut in high school, of course. And again, not to compare myself to MJ, because I'm nowhere near Brian Scalabrine, to quote Scalabrine, let alone MJ. But not making the cut because, I played okay in the tryout game, I thought, and better than some, but there were politics, obviously, involved. And I'm not going to say that I was undisputedly the best on the court or anything, but certainly I didn't make the cut because, I don't think I had a great chance because the teacher running the team certainly had her favorites picked out before that. I'll just say that much. But missing out on that, I was very bummed the afternoon afterwards, and that came home that weekend and decided, you know what, I want to play competitive basketball. I'm going to give the local league a try, put my name down at the stadium, got picked up by a team, and played my entire local league career with that team. The loyalty back in the day, Derek, playing for the City Bulls all those years. And so that's kind of how I got started in competitive basketball. Not a great story so much as a success or anything, but that drove me to... It didn't make me give up on playing basketball competitively, missing out on the school team. I never tried out for the school team again after that because I didn't care for that teacher, quite frankly, or didn't really want to represent the school either after that, which is a bit bitter, I suppose. But I was having fun playing with my local league team, but that's what drove me to it, failing. And it's that point that Michael Jordan had made, that you can fail over and over and over again, but that is how you succeed.
Andrew, the Dirk Nowitzki loyalty, but to a local league team. I love that. So I know you're what, 6'3", 6'4"?
6'3", right? Yep.
Yeah. When you tried out for the team, did you still have that good size? And could the team have used that size, especially say on the defensive end and whatnot? So for that reason, were you shocked that you didn't make it, or did they not, or did they already have size and you kind of expected that maybe you were going to get cut?
I mean, there were a couple of the tall kids there. I was already pushing 6 foot by the time I was 14, or 13, 14. So I definitely had the size at the time. But, I mean, there were some other players there who had definitely played competitive basketball at that time. So they did have an advantage in that respect. I guess I wasn't totally shocked, but I was a bit disappointed because I was one of the first to put my name down. Then more people put their name down, and there were tryouts. And I kind of didn't get much of a run, and because... Again, I wasn't known to the teacher, so I didn't get much of a run to really show what I could do. And it's I had the height at the time, but certainly there were other more skilled players. But it did drive me to want to improve and to actually get into competitive basketball as well.
If it makes you feel better, I didn't make my freshman team. And the reason why I didn't is I was 5'1". I've talked about this before. And then I went through a 10-inch growth spurt over pretty much that summer into my sophomore year. And obviously that helped me look more appealing as a basketball player. But when I didn't make the team my freshman year, another reason could have been politics, Andrew, because like I stated, I didn't come up in the system. In fact, I was not in public school from 3rd grade basically until 9th grade, right? So nobody knew who I was. I was a complete outsider. Meanwhile, all these other kids that were going into the tryouts were people that either played for the baseball team, historically, football, soccer sometimes, they were known kids. A lot of them grew up doing camps, etc. So, but I was very proud of overcoming that and then playing my last 3 years, including, a couple years on varsity and also being a starter at point guard, even at my 6 feet to 6'2" height, at that time. So that was, kind of overcoming that made me feel pretty good. I have a few more. So I had a men's league game. So when you say local league, this is the same thing, men's league. So a local league game where I hit 13 threes in the first half of the game and 19 total. And we beat one of the better teams in the league. And at halftime, the scorekeeper came up to me and he goes, "Do you have any idea how many threes you just hit in the first half?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And he's like, 13. And he was just floored by it. And one of my memories of that game is the center from the other team apparently didn't like me too much. And I went up for a jump shot around the paint area, and he punched me in the stomach while I was in the air.
Oh, lovely.
And let me tell you, when you don't expect that and you don't have a chance to kind of brace for it, that hurts like hell. And I went to the floor, and it was this big thing. And, they got super physical with me in that second half. But yeah, I'll never forget the pain of that punch. That hurt. Throwing an alley-oop to my best friend, who was roughly my height. I think I was about a half inch taller than him. He was 6'1". Throwing an alley-oop to my friend on an outdoor court during a pickup game, 5-on-5 full court, and him throwing it down on somebody, and their face was in his crotch area, Andrew. It was truly what they call a teabag. Yeah. Like, it was an absolutely awesome alley-oop finish. Yeah, I threw the alley-oop from about half court, and he caught it and threw it down on this guy. My friend was an unbelievable athlete. He could dunk whenever he wanted, when we were just kind of messing around. But that was his only ever in-game dunk, pickup or otherwise. And he played high school ball with me as well, etc. But it was just such an amazing moment. We didn't shut up about it for months after it happened. And he kind of became a legend after that point at the local court, because how often do you see that?
I mean, if you're going to have one and only dunk in your life, that is the one to throw down.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I had a season in men's league when I was about 25 years old where we went a slightly above 500 record. We definitely didn't have one of the best teams in the league, but over 500, we definitely overachieved. And I was second in the league in scoring that year. And I feel like there was a lot of talent, and I averaged 36 points per game that season. And I felt like that was a season where I just couldn't miss. And I felt physically I was probably the best I've ever been in my life. And just kind of a feeling of every night I can go out there and put up numbers and help our team. That was a great feeling. Probably my favorite moment in my basketball life was winning a league championship with my oldest brother. And we played in this local league, and there ended up only being 7 games. But we went 7-0, and in the final game, so in the finals, we were not favored. Even though we hadn't lost a game all season, we were playing against the team that won it the prior year. That the team that we played against had a few all-state players. They had a lot of size, including a couple guys that were about 6'7" or 6'8", and our tallest player was 6'3". Our center was 6'3". And we overcame the odds together. My brother hit a couple threes in that game. We ended up winning a close one and just sharing that championship with him. And, you know, us playing our hearts out together on the court. We only had 6 guys in that game, so we had to play a lot together in that game. We constantly talk about that season still to this day. And that season was in 2014. So it's been about 10 years, and we still will not shut up about that championship that we experienced together. So that's probably my favorite. But the last one I'll share, Andrew, is another moment I'm pretty proud of is I was playing in a local league recently. So in December of 2023, and I had finally returned to playing basketball after 7 years with right knee issues. And it was scary at first. And I scored 48 points in a win, and I felt like I was invincible in that game. I was pulling up from 3 from everywhere, you know, spin moves into jump shots. I was posting up and doing various moves because I feel like I have an underrated post game, especially for a guy who's about 6'2" and whatnot. But I don't know, being my age, playing against mostly people that are younger than me, you know, having that 7 years off and then coming back and being able to score almost 50 points in a win, that's something I'll never forget. And, you know, I really hope that I can get back into playing, and my recovery from ACL and femur surgery, it's going well. And I feel like I'm ahead of schedule.
Excellent.
But I hope I can get some of that magic back.
Oh, for sure. And those are very special memories and this is one we play to compete, and to have those great memories and to win that with your brother is really, really cool.
And we got shirts, right? So for winning that championship with my brother, we have T-shirts.
Yeah.
And we will never let anything happen to those. He has his framed. Like his championship T-shirt is in a frame on his wall, and he'll send me a picture every now and then of it just to remind me of, you know, how much he appreciates that win. And yeah, nothing beats it, especially when you do it with a sibling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Wish I'd been able to play competitively with my cousin, especially because he was a rep player, much better than me, and we probably could have won some things together. Would have been very cool. So the last story I'll share is, it's kind of bittersweet, but growing up, had a friend, Dean. He would play basketball with us. He was more of a baseball guy. He would always rib me about Michael Jordan's baseball stint. Always a friendly stint. He was a fan of Michael Jordan as a basketball player, but he would rib me about the baseball side of things, which he was the bigger baseball fan. But he had a younger brother, Russell, who did like basketball and did play competitively as well. And Russell was a great kid. He was a few years younger than us, but he was mature beyond his years. And as I said, he got into playing basketball actually before me. And as I said before, I put my name down to join a local team, and the team that I would end up playing for was looking for players to join, and they asked if I would come and play, and I did. And as I said, I would end up playing several years for that team. But Russell was actually playing for the same club in a lower age group, and he was there, met quite randomly, didn't know he was playing that day, and he hung around to watch my first game. And that was special to know that somebody that I knew was watching the game. And after the game, he could tell that I was a bit unsure. It was my very first competitive, organised game. Didn't really know how I'd played. I was a bit unsure of myself. Again, years younger than us, but wiser, more mature than his years. Reassured me and said, "Oh, you played really well. You should keep at it. You should keep playing this competitively." And that meant a lot to me. And over the years, drifted apart. He went over and worked in Canada for a while. Came back, and I was organising just a shoot around at the university one day for my birthday, and he came to that, and it ended up just being us playing one-on-one and shooting around and so forth. And we just played, again, for probably about an hour, going back and forth in this one-on-one, and I'd already gone for a 5K run that morning. I was running 5K every day at the time, so I was pretty tired by the end, and so was he. And we were laughing about how by the end of it, we had no legs. We were just tossing up long jumpers against each other and trying to get our own rebounds because we didn't have we were gassed. We didn't have legs anymore. And unfortunately, a couple of years ago, Russell, in his early 30s, passed away in a tragic car accident. And so that was really sad, obviously. But one of the memories that came to mind for me when after his passing was how he shared that love of basketball with me that day. And I always appreciated Russell for his maturity and his friendship. But that was a really nice memory to reflect upon at a very difficult time.
And two things. First off, I'm sorry for your loss. That's really tough. And second, how great is that feeling of just your body being completely done?
Yeah,
I know that sounds silly, but just the fact that you gave it your all, your body is just like yelling at you to stop. But you almost just want to keep playing, right?
Exactly,
because you love playing so much. And there's been so many moments in my life where just I played 4 or 5 hours straight, sometimes more, with my best friend Craig. And, our bodies were telling us to stop, but we were just like, no way. And we're just doing whatever we possibly can to stay on the court and put up shots. I do want to point out, you mentioned his tragic death. So, the center that I was talking about that punched me in the stomach. Well, he ended up playing with me in a league actually a few years later. And he was an awesome teammate. Loved having him. Maybe that's how people felt about Bill Laimbeer, right? Loved playing with him, but you didn't want to play against him.
Patrick Beverly.
But and he was formerly married to an 80s, 90s, and early 2000s movie star. I believe they divorced in 2014. But yeah, he went missing in 2017 over the Bermuda Triangle. I know that sounds crazy, but I looked him up on Google to see what he was up to. And because you often think about people that you've met in the past and wonder what they're up to, right? And it's like, oh my God, this guy probably passed away.
God, my condolences on that. That's crazy. It's one of those things where you think, like Russell's accident and everything, you think, it always happens to other people, not you or people you know.
Yeah, just wild stuff.
But a lot of memories. I mean, we could go on and on for probably hours sharing these memories of competitive games, organised league games, and also playing on the playground. But I guess we should probably get to some of our community stories as well.
That sounds good.
So hey, let's tip things off with Stildo. Says, my dad spent hours rebounding for me from 7th to 12th grade, school gym, local park, my house. Some of my favourite memories in life are of him rebounding for me. I remember in 7th and 8th grade, we'd walk over to the local park in rain, snow, could be super windy, it didn't matter. If you could shoot in those conditions, you could shoot in any gymnasium. The local town board in the town I grew up in would get complaints of people playing basketball late at night at the local park, 12 a.m. sometimes. It was always just us. They always responded with, we know, it's Indiana. He was also on the town board. Indiana, what a hotbed of hoops.
Yeah, and I believe him because he's actually shown me footage of him playing from when he was younger and from a recent alumni game, and he has an awesome shot, right? Like, he's a pure shooter, and I can only imagine how much he worked on his shot growing up. And we were similar. My brothers and I, we would shovel an area out of our driveway in order to have a spot to shoot from, right? And we'd be out there shooting with thin gloves in order to, just keep playing and play at all costs and all of that. So, and that's a great memory that he was able to, share with his dad.
Yeah, playing in all conditions. I remember playing in the backyard with my cousin Clinton when it got very muddy because the grass got torn up by playing on the grass so much. It became a mud bowl when it rained, but we were kind of dribbling through the mud. So there were a few times coming in very muddy after some backyard sessions there. Nate Starshow says, we were playing the 12:20 p.m. late game on a weeknight, and I hit a game-tying 3 to send us into overtime. I told the ref I was sorry. I made them have to stay later.
Yeah, so I love the fact that Nate and Roger were sharing league clips on a YouTube channel. I remember the first time that I got to know them when I had asked them for an NBA Live 2001 Grant Hill highlight so I could include it in the top 10. It was a Grant Hill dunk where it was one of those super jumps where his waist looked like it was basically at the rim. Looked like an NBA Jam dunk. And he threw it down, just jumped way too high. And I was like, I got to include that. That's actually how I ended up becoming friends with Nate and Roger. But I knew that they played in leagues because if I remember correctly, I was looking at their channel, or it might have been Nate's personal channel or whatnot. And they were showing games, like they were showing actual footage from the league games. So I love it that they're still playing.
Wish I had more footage of myself back in the day. Although maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd be critiquing my jump shot and not making certain moves. Speaking of the Live in 1 legends, Roger adds, in a YMCA regular season game, I hit 9 or 10 threes, including a first half buzzer beater. It was just one of those games where you're in a zone and can't miss.
Yeah, and that's how I felt in the game where I hit those 13 threes in the first half, and I hit the 4 threes against Biddeford in that first high school varsity game, and how I felt many times playing basketball. And there's no better feeling than being in the zone, because from your feet all the way up to your fingertips, everything feels like it's in sync. You don't even need to think about it, Andrew, right? When you're in the zone, everything is working, and you're not even thinking about the form on your shot because you're just in that zone. So yeah, I love it.
And Stephen, the Live King, says, after I got suspended for fighting in 7th grade, I switched schools, got on the basketball team. Me and my other duo dropped 30 each on my old school. The coach didn't play my brother, who would have played me tough. He was laughing on their bench.
Yeah, his brother knew that Stephen had it, right? That he had the skill and that he wasn't going to be able to be stopped. And probably the only one who knew Stephen's game better than Stephen was his brother, right? And my brothers and I joke about that because we played so much one-on-one growing up and whatnot. And nobody knows each other's games like we know each other's games, right? So, yeah, I love that story. And it must have been a great feeling, putting that type of performance out there on your old school.
And one more response from Facebook now. Alejandro says, they were in a playoff series. They were the number 8 seed versus the number 1 seed. And they won that game on the last play with a 3-pointer that he hit. It wasn't drawn for him. He said play pick and roll. He was in the opposite corner. When he saw that on a switch he was being defended by the center, he ran directly to the front and the point guard passed to him because he was wide open. It was all net. We won by 1. And that was his last game in that league. And he shared a photo of the box score that he still has. And yeah, when you can hit a clutch shot, whether it's scoring a few clutch buckets to win a game, as I did in my local league game, or a game winner, yeah, it's very exciting. And again, you feel like a superstar. You feel like the stars you've seen on TV.
You feel like the king of the world. At that very moment, you were on top of the world, and your teammates love you, your coaches love you, the other team hates you. Yeah, it's hard to beat a game winner.
And thank you once again to everybody who shared their stories. Once again, it's great to hear about basketball gaming memories, but a lot of us played real basketball, whether it was just in social leagues or just at school or in competitive local leagues or men's leagues, as an adult, as you have, Derek. And yeah, you do create these memories on the real hardwood and blacktop, just like the virtual ones.
Yeah, and keep sharing with us.
Yeah.
Right. And, if you're still playing in leagues, or, you're playing for your school, or, you have, maybe you go to the gym, shoot around, and maybe you take some clips of you shooting around or something like that. Like, we love seeing stuff like that, because we love seeing that the community loves the real game of basketball as well. And we love to hear your commentary when it comes to the current state of real basketball as well. So, yeah, definitely, keep on sharing.
I mean, the reason that many of us got into basketball games was a love of basketball, or indeed the love of basketball games ended up enjoying the real sport as well. So it's all connected.
Yeah, I personally think that the majority of people love basketball first, and then the video game comes after.
Same.
But I know that there are some instances where, maybe somebody, played a basketball video game first, and that sparked their love for the sport.
When you see them mention a role player as their all-time favorite player, they might have used them in a game and had a great game with them as virtual hardwood legend.
Exactly.
So thank you once again. But with that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on YouTube, D43, and on the NLSC, D43.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep a look to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.